When Warlord first announced they were doing a Black Powder Epic Revolution series, I knew I had to get this box, the Hessians and Allies Brigade, because of these guys right here. Now, I don't play American War of Independence, I play Napoleonic war games, but when I saw them with the Hessian Grenadiers with these mitre hats, I knew I had to have them because the first thing that comes to mind when I see that is Russian Pavlovsky Grenadiers. Now, Pavlovsky Grenadiers weren't formed until 1796, and while they do have a mitre hat, they were one of the last European armed forces to use the mitre hat. It was already old-fashioned by that point. So these figures would be great for 7 Years' War. I could see these as Prussian Grenadiers for your seven-year war project. But again, since I play Napoleonics, I want to get these as Pavlovskys. Now, Pavlovskys were formed in 1796, as I said, and it would be great if you wanted to do an Italian campaign, say Suvorov in the Alps. These would be perfect for that. Their gear is a little more 7 Years' War era. They've got this long queue in the back, the ponytail, the queue, and they do not have a backpack or a bayonet. And we will talk about a way to address that with a head swap. That's going to be the hard way. The easy way is we just paint these straight up as they are out of the box as Pavlovsky Grenadiers. And then a second option, the hard way to do it, would be to take some of the Epic Waterloo Prussian Infantry and do a head swap with this mitre cap head. That's a little more involved and it requires some more plastic. Looking at some reference art, you can see the iconic mitre cap. It's got some silver and brass details. You can also see some units would have worn black gaiters. I think that's more of a Fusilier style. Here in this reference art, you can see both Fusiliers and Grenadiers. In fact, the Pavlovsky Grenadiers would have been only 25% Grenadiers and 75% Fusiliers. So if you want to do Fusiliers, I would suggest cutting the pom-pom off the top before you prime it, and then painting their gaiters black, and there you've got an elite light company right there. I'll probably do both. I'll probably do some as Grenadiers and some as Fusiliers, but I always go for the rule of cool, and that means whatever looks cool gets on the table, and I think the Grenadiers look cool. So let's go ahead and do that paint conversion first, though, the easy way. So we're just gonna paint these up to look like late 18th century, early 19th century Russian Grenadiers. First, we need to clean our plastic sprues off. We're going to do that by using an appropriately sized container filled with some warm water and dishwashing soap. We're going to get some suds going and thoroughly wash off the sprue. We can leave it in there a while to soak, but when we rinse, we want to make sure we get all of that soapy residue off, get it nice and clean, and then just leave that to dry for a little while. Next, to prep the models after they are completely dry, we can just use a pair of plastic nippers. We're going to go ahead and cut the Hessian Grenadiers out that we want to use. If there's any nibs of plastic still, we can clean that up with a nice sharp X-Acto, or here I'm using a surgical scalpel. Be very careful. I'm also going to cut the nibs off the bottom of the model. If you're using the bases that Warlord provides, you do not need to do this, or this step. This is optional step. I paint in groups of 5 and I base them 5 wide instead of 10 wide. So that's optional if you're not doing that. Now we're ready to prime. And I use a Tamiya fine surface primer. We're going to use white. It's important that we use white because of the paint scheme that we're going to be doing. You can use whatever brand of primer that you prefer, but I like the results I get from the Tamiya. We're going to give it 2 light coats for keeping the can moving. We're not dwelling anywhere because we don't want to obscure any of the detail of the model. We want to keep it nice and sharp. And there we go. We got the primed model ready to paint. After we let our primed figures dry for a day or two, we're going to start the painting process with this Citadel color shade. This is Nuln Oil. If you prefer Army Painter, I think dark tone will give you a similar result. And I'm just using an old calligraphy brush and giving this a nice even coat of Nuln oil. The Nuln oil will fall into the recesses of the figure, and it'll give us some definition and some free shadows that'll help us in our future paint layers. Once the Nuln oil is completely dried, we're going to use Citadel Color Contrast Black Templar. And we're going to use Black Templar to paint the boots, the scabbard, and cartridge box. For this particular unit, I'm keeping the gaiters white, so I'm painting a little bit tidy on the boots and trying to keep the splash off the gaiters. It doesn't matter if we get it on the base too much, because we'll be doing a brown wash on the base. But I am taking my time and being a little methodical here, painting the boots. And here we are, putting some Black Templar on the cartridge boxes. And I'm also going to paint the scabbards here. The next color we're going to use is another Citadel contrast color. This one is Corandrus Green. We're going to use that to paint all of the jacket areas. This is a nice bright green, but when you view it at the tabletop distance, it's going to give us a good result. I'm looking at a reference painting here by von Hess. This is the Pavlovsky Grenadiers rushing across a burning bridge at Klyastitsi. This was painted decades after the fact, but von Hess was actually did serve in the Napoleonic Wars. And if you notice, the Pavlovskys here have a little green pom-pom with a white dot. So I think that's a cool detail. So we're going to work that into the models as we paint him. Next up, we're going to paint red, and we're going to use Citadel Colors Contrast Ball Red. And we're going to use this to get the cuffs, the turnbacks, the epaulets, in particular the back of the mitre cap. Now I want to paint the musette bag or the haversack, and for that I'm going to use Army Painter's Speed Paint Pallid Bone. We're just going to give a nice even coat to the haversack. Next color we're going to use is Citadel Color Contrast Gore Gruntifer. We're going to use that to paint the wood, the stock of the musket that these grenadiers are carrying. I'm being careful not to paint the hand that's holding the musket, because we're going to use another contrast color for the flesh, and I don't want those interacting. I want to keep the hand clean for the next step. Next color, let's paint the flesh in with Citadel Color Contrast Guilliman Flesh. We're going to use that to do, obviously, the hands, the face. And now we're going to base coat all of the steel areas. I'm using model color by Vallejo. This color is called Oily Steel, and I'm just using that to get a base coat on all of the steel areas. So the firing mechanism, the barrel of the gun, there's also that silvery detail on the back of the miter cap, so we're going to paint that in as well. Now let's do the brass areas, and for that I'm also using a Vallejo model color. This one is brass, fittingly enough, and we're going to use that to paint the front of the miter cap and also the tips of the scabbards. I'm coming back to the Citadel color shade Nuln Oil, and I'm using it this time to sort of develop some of the shadows. So anywhere I see that the figures could use a little more pronounced shadow, I'm going to drop that in with the Nuln Oil now. It's time to paint the mustaches, another iconic feature of Grenadiers. For that I'm using Citadel Color Contrast Wildwood and a very fine brush, and I'm just following the contour of the mustache as it's sculpted. I'm also going to use Wildwood to paint in the tie on the Grenadier's queue. In reality, probably the entire queue would be wrapped in a dark gray or black cloth. I just painted it with Nuln Oil, but if you wanted, you could accentuate this with a either a black or a dark gray. I'm going to highlight the flesh now. This is a Vic Hobby Light Flesh Bright 1. It's a very fluid paint. You can use whatever flesh highlight color you like, but to make sure it's a step higher than the contrast color. Next, I'm going to highlight a few of the contrast paint areas by using a more opaque model color by Vallejo. I'm going to use buff, intermediate green, and off-white. Then we're going to use this to touch up and highlight some of the areas that we've already painted. Starting with the buff, I'm just going to put a little highlight on the haversack, wherever I think the light would be hitting the brightest area. Then using the intermediate green, I'm again thinking about where the light would be coming from and just hitting a little bit of highlights on the green. And then finally, I'm going to touch up the crossbody straps with this pure off-white. That's going to give me, if I was sloppy anywhere, a chance to clean that up as well. I'm also going to use the white to drop some slight highlights on the gaiters and trousers. My battery died while I was painting the dots in on the pom-pom, but you can see here I've dotted the pom-pom with white. And yeah, I'm going to use that white now to highlight the strapping on the back of the miter cap. It's going to be 3 lines. You could also paint these in brass. I've seen specimens of this hat that were sort of an off-white fabric strapping, and I've also seen ones where this is actually like a brass reinforcement. I think it shows up a little better as white on red, but yeah, use your judgment. Now I've got a pen out. I'm going to use this Neo Pico Line 3 by Deleter. This is a very fine pen, a 003. And I'm just using it to sort of define some shapes where I think colors meet. So this silver and brass meet on the back here. It's not super apparent, so I'm going to use the liner to define those shapes. And I'm also dropping some shadows in on the crossbody straps, just anywhere I think that the model can use a little more definition. I've got the Gilliman Flesh contrast shade back out again, and I'm just going to use it to add a little depth and texture to the brass fitting on the front of the miter cap. I'm putting it on a little bit textured because there would actually be a relief imprint of an eagle here. And finally, we're using Express Color by Vallejo. This is Wasteland Brown, and I'm just using that to wash the base. This is going to give me a nice dirt underlaying for when I use static grass to base these later. And finally, I'm going to do a little highlight using Vallejo's Model Air Metallic Steel. And this I'm just going to touch on the very top of the firing mechanism and give a little highlight to the firearm. And there we go. That's the Hessian Grenadiers from the Revolution line, painted as if they were French Revolutionary War / Napoleonic era Pavlovsky Grenadiers. This is a paint job where I've done the head swap, and I'll show you how to do that here in a moment. But to give you some contrast here, this is the straight out of the box ones versus the ones with the head swap. So if you feel up to it, I'll show you how to do it the hard way now. To do this head swap, of course, we're going to need some extra figures. We're going to need these Russian Line Infantry. That's from the Waterloo campaign, the Epic Waterloo campaign, and the Hessian Grenadiers. Sometimes when you swap heads, it's as simple as just cutting beneath the chin and you know, you can swap cleanly. But unfortunately, that's not the case here, because we want to retain the bayonet and musket from the Prussian, and we want to lose the firearm from the Hessian. So in this case, we're going to need to, it's not going to be as clean, so we're going to have to cut down and over. It's a little bit wasteful, but it is going to give us the look that we're going for. So let me show you how to do that now. I'm going to use this fine saw, and using the musket on the Prussian soldier as a guide, I'm just going to cut straight down with that saw. I'm trying to cut a notch down to his neck, and then using a pair of sharp nippers, I'm going to nip in from the side and remove the head. We're going to need to clean that shape up though with a very sharp X-Acto blade. You can see I kind of damaged one of the muskets there, but I'll fix that with super glue in a moment. Right now we're just making sure we've cleared out enough material so that we get the head to sit in flat. Now we've got to remove the miter cap heads from the Hessian Grenadiers. I find it easiest if we remove their gun from the side of the head first. So again, I've got that sharp scalpel, that X-Acto blade out, and I'm just going to peel away the gun. It doesn't have to be too clean because it's going to be mated up against the gun on that's left over from the Prussian, but I do want it to fit nice and tight. Now using those sharp nippers again, we're going to use the flat at the bottom of the nipper to find the chin. It's going to take off some of the shoulders, but that's okay. We'd rather have more material than less. And using the flat of that nipper to find the bottom, the chin, we're going to just cut that off. Here I'm test fitting to see if the fit's good. I think I need to remove a little bit more material here, but I'm just checking the test fit. I use Tamiya extra thin cement. You're going to want to use a good model glue cement here. Now be careful, this glue will melt the details, so we want to keep it off the face. We only want to put the glue where it's essential to hold the head. We don't want to lose any detail in the face. And it takes a bit of work, but keep test fitting, keep cutting until you get a fit that you like. Here I'm going to fix that bayonet that broke off with some super glue. Super glue is going to be a little tougher. And I'm also looking for any gaps and filling it with that model cement. And there we go. It took some doing, but we've got 5 of those miter heads now on the Prussian line. You only get about 60 of those heads in a brigade box, so it's careful work. And now I've primed them up, and yeah, it has come together pretty well. Now I'm going to paint these up. I've already done a painting tutorial on Russian Line Infantry, so follow that and you'll get these results. Of course, the head's going to be painted the same way as this tutorial. And there we go. That's a comparison. You can see how they look next to each other. I think I'm going to use the shorter ones as Fusiliers and the tall ones as Grenadiers. And thank you very much for watching.